are dragging, waiting for a second to push you to your limits, going strong and feeling better. But do you feel them? Can you hear them say?
Welcome to the Learning Lab, where we teach you how to retire without running out of money. This is the daily NASDAQ market update. Thank you for joining us today. This is a quick update of what happened in the markets today around the world, and we're going to highlight two stocks from the NASDAQ 100. That's why we call this the NASDAQ market update, because we want to keep you up to date and teach you just a little bit about some of the different stocks in that index. So without further ado, let's get right into it and talk a little bit about what happened in the markets today. If you take a look at the graph at the top, you can kind of get a pretty good idea of what went on in general. The broader markets were down. The over-the-counter stocks were up slightly, and on a worldwide basis, stocks were up except in Europe. So let's take a look at exactly what went on today. As you can see, the NASDAQ came up about 0.26%. The S&P 500 kind of lagged along, and so did the Dow Jones Industrials. The thing that we're seeing right now in the United States is that things are weighed down by the coronavirus, of course, but the stimulus package is stuck in Congress. There's a battle between the Democrats and the Republicans. Geez, I'm sure you already know that. The Democrats want to have mail-in voting, the Republicans don't, and they're at a stalemate, and they've even agreed that they're miles and miles apart. But there are still stocks that are advancing, and there's still stocks to consider. So we're going to look at it around the world too. This is a good case for diversification. Take a look at what happened in Europe. The FTSE 100, that's the one that's in London. The 100 largest stocks that are on the London Exchange was down about 1.5%. The closest behind that was the Euronext, which is in Belgium, and it was down about 0.89%. If we skip on over to Asia, we can see that the Nikkei index really led the pack for everyone today, up 1.78%. Apparently, inflation is ticking up just a little bit, and in Japan, that tends to be good news. The other stocks were kind of mixed. The Sensex in Bombay, actually in Bombay index in Mumbai, was down just a little bit. The Hang Seng was pretty even, about 0.05%, and the Shanghai index, Shanghai was up just 0.04%. In Canada, well, we didn't have that when it came up today, but in Canada, we also were down in the markets just a little bit today. What I've thrown up here on the screen next is just well, let's say it's a spaghetti graph of what we're going to look at today. There's two different stocks that we want to look at. One to be Alexion, and the other is going to be Align. We also compare those two stocks at the very beginning of our broadcast to what happened in the NASDAQ 100. The NASDAQ 100, you can see, is the green line right here. And it basically wasn't changed very much throughout the day. But you can see that Align Technologies was pretty active for the day, and following behind the other two that we've represented here is Alexion, which is a pharmaceuticals company. We're going to talk about that just a little bit more. But let's take a look at this, what it's looked like with these two stocks in comparison to the NASDAQ 100 over the past 6 months. You can see beginning of the year, of course, we know what all went on between March when the market went crazy for the coronavirus stock market crash, and we've recovered almost to the point that we were past that point in time. The most active stock that you can see right now of the two that we're following has been Align, and we're going to talk about what Align does and talk about its valuations here in just a moment. Alexion has been pretty much with the NASDAQ 100. It spiked over it for a little bit, but it's been pretty close to it from that standpoint. Okay, so let's look at what these companies really do. Alexion is a pharmaceutical company that specializes in certain rare diseases, hematology, nephrology, metabolic diseases, neurology, cardiology. All these different things are what Alexion does. Now, one of the interesting things about Alexion, if you look at it over the last 3 months, it really hasn't moved a whole lot. If we look at it over the last 6 months, it's gone up just a little bit, but there's been some profit taking from that standpoint. We'll talk about why that is in just a little bit. But this is one of those stocks. This was an article that was from Motley Fool, and I think it really pinpoints the direction of Alexion. You see, as I've mentioned before, Alexion is one of those companies that specializes in pharmaceuticals that for rare diseases. Now, this is one of the stocks that the Motley Fool says that if Trump gets reelected, that'll be a profitable stock. One of the reasons is this company creates drugs that are extremely, extremely expensive. They have actually the one that is the most popular is Solera. Solera for just milliliters cost $6,820. They have actually some drugs that are even more expensive than that. Now let's get back to the other stock, Align Technologies. Now, Align, you've probably seen the commercials for Invisalign systems. The Invisalign system is basically a type of brace mechanism, and those of you out there that have gone through having braces, you know that it's not a cheap endeavor. I have 2 kids. We've gone through it, so we've put about $10,000 in their mouth, and we know that there's a lot of money that goes into this on a worldwide basis. The company really has stagnated just a little bit because of the pandemic, and the reason is people aren't going to the dentist, and braces aren't seen as a emergency situation. It's more of a cosmetic situation, but it's still very popular, and we're seeing the value of the stock come back a little bit more as the economy opens back up. But the thing about Invisalign is this is what happened over the past 3 months. There's still demand that's going on. If we go back and we look at it from the last 6 months, the value went down in the time period that the coronavirus stock market crash began. And what we saw is it kind of languished around there because dentists, orthodontists weren't opening up their offices. Now they are, and the company, along with other stocks, has begun to come back. Now, why do I put this picture up here? What is the picture of? This is a picture of a moat. Now, if you know about a moat is outside of a castle. And a wide moat, you have a protection. If you have a moat or you have no moat, you don't have any protection. And when we're talking about stocks, sometimes you'll hear the idea of having a moat referred to in stocks. Now, this is what it means. If a company has a wide moat, that means that it competes very well in its particular market. If you have a company that has a narrow moat or no moat whatsoever, that company in itself, it has some issues in competition. Now, when we look at Align Technologies, the thing is, Align Technologies has one product. In days past, we've looked at other different stocks, and you've seen companies like Autodesk, and you've seen companies like even Apple and Amazon that has a tremendous amount of diversification in where that they are making profits. But this is a company that has one product. So take it with what you will. And we're going to look at some of the valuations in just a moment. And I think you'll get a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about as far as valuations go. If we look at Alexion, this is information that's from Morningstar. If we look at the valuations of Alexion Pharmaceuticals, we can see that the fair market value is right at $155 according to Morningstar. Well, It closed at 102.78 today. So it's actually one of those stocks that would be considered a high rating because it has a high potential for profitability. Will it have its profitability impacted by the elections? Well, it's possible that it could. If we have Medicare for all and pharmaceuticals have more controls over their pricing, then Alexion could be impacted by that. If Mr. Trump is reelected, then what we could see is this company continue to profit quite considerably because the market is going to be, it's going to be a free market from that standpoint. It is an expensive drug, but it is being utilized, and they don't have just one drug. Even though Solaris is a very popular drug, it's not the only drug that's out there. Now, compare that or to Align Technologies. Now, remember, I told you that Align Technologies has how many products? One. They have one product. It's the Invisalign. The product itself, the fair market value, actually the stock in itself, the fair market value is 175. That fair market value is far below right now as close is. It closed today at 307.98. So there's a bit in between what analysts are saying the fair market value is of this stock and actually what is happening in the valuation. Let's take a look at what's happening with the insiders. That's a really big thing. And I think that you can tell an awful lot by looking at what the ownership of the company, the executives, are doing with their own shares. When we look at Align Technologies, you might have to zoom in on the screen, but you can actually see that there's a lot more red on this screen than there is green. In the last 3 months, what we've seen is there's been more sellers than buyers as far as insiders go. And that also goes for the last 6 months. And even in the last 12 months, it's been double. There have been 62 sales and 31 buys in Invisalign over the past year. What that tells me is that we're not the only ones that sees that this company possibly is overvalued. There are people that actually work in the company that are seeing the company overvalued. Now, please don't take this as a recommendation to go out and buy or sell any particular stock, because you have to make those decisions that are going to be based on your own situation. You have to make the decisions and how it's going to work for you. You may look at a company like Align Technologies and think, geez, this is a product. If you're an orthodontist, you might look at it and go, there are so many kids out there that are using this, and there's more teenagers and adults that are using it. It's being used on a worldwide basis, which is the way that Align Technologies is promoting this. It's being promoted as a worldwide basis. But at the point in time right now, we're seeing that there are more sellers on the inside of this company than there are buyers. Now, if we skip on over and we look at Alexion Pharmaceuticals, it's actually the opposite. And that reflects what we saw in the valuations that Morningstar is projecting, where that we have a valuation, a fair market value that's actually that's actually above what it's selling right now. In the last 3 months, we've seen double buyers on the inside than sellers. And that's been reflected also in the last 6 months and the last 12 months too. So you have to make a decision on how that's going to work with you and your particular portfolio. Now, for some of you, the environmental, the social, or the governance attributes of a company is important to you. You may look at a company and think, well, how is this company impacting the environment? And we're going to talk about that just a little bit because there may be a little surprise in here for you. This is information that comes from MSCI. MSCI is a renowned analytics company that researches ratings of companies, the financial stability, and not only financial stability, great job of researching the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance attributes of companies. And if you haven't ever listened to it, one of my favorite podcasts is the ESG MSCI podcast. I think that they do an awesome job, and it's enjoyable to listen to the guy that does that. But when we look at Alexion is average in most of its ESG attributes. They have an exceptional corporate governance team. But let's skip on over to Align Technologies, which is a little bit different. Align Technologies has very good attributes as far as ESG attributes, as far as corporate governance and product safety, human capital development. One key issue, though, that they lag behind in is in carbon emissions, because you have to think Align Technologies actually is a manufacturer. Yes, they are a distributor of their product, but they also have manufacturing too. Now, I don't have the exact specifics of it, but if you're interested in investing in companies that have a lower carbon footprint, then you might want to look a little bit deeper into Align Technologies and see if it actually fits into what you think you should be investing in. So, as we finish up for today, I just want to remind you that what we do at Richards Financial Planning is we design financial plans that can help you avoid running out of money during retirement. And I would say to you that if you are in a situation, how can you use this information that we've talked about today to help you if you're getting retired or you're investing for retirement? Well, think about this. We talked about valuations of stocks. Perhaps you want to invest in stocks that have better possibilities for evaluations, for valuation, not just evaluations. One of the ways that we help people with this particular situation is through something called direct indexing, where we will help them to invest directly into the index, not investing in a mutual fund, not investing in a exchange traded fund, but investing directly in that index and then customizing that index to take advantage of whatever attributes that the individual needs. In other words, if you're looking for companies that have lower carbon footprints, then we would look at information from EMEA and try to eliminate companies that have a higher pollution issue. The graph that I showed you just a little bit ago showed you the bar graph that was sideways, showed you all of the different companies and the negative attributes and the positive attributes from the ESG standpoint. We can overlay that onto the NASDAQ 100, the S&P 500, and pick out stocks that are not fitting what your criteria is. You may look for companies that have just dividends. Now, we didn't talk about dividends today, but dividends is one of the things in this show that we do centralize on a regular basis, because if you're retired, you're probably not getting a lot of money from companies that are issuing bonds so that you have you'll have income. So dividends from dividend paying stocks may be something that is important to you and you want to consider from that standpoint. So that gives you an idea of how you could use some of this information. It's very individualized. So if you don't just come today and say, hey, I want to buy Align Technologies or I want to buy Alexion. If you have a question, go to our website at richardsfinancialplanning.com, sign up for a time to have a conversation with me, and you and I remotely, virtually, will have a conversation about what some of the things are that are important to you and how that we can help you possibly to improve your retirement so that you don't run out of money during retirement. Thanks a lot for watching today. If you have any questions, make sure that you enter them into the comment section, even if you're watching this on a replay, because we do go back and go over the comment, respond to them, and we might even get a chance to talk about them tomorrow. So join us tomorrow as we see what happens in the stock market and what goes on from there. Everybody have a very good day.